everybody. How are you doing today? You good? How's your hangover? It was fun yesterday. So I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for the invite. Thanks for being here. I've been coming to KIKK for quite some time. It's the best festival, so I'm really excited to be on a stage this time. So yeah, let's go. My name is Cristina Tarquini, and I'm a Creative Director and Technologist. I'm a freelancer, and I do quite a lot of different things. My work is quite varied, but it's always about creating immersive experiences. Sometimes I work on physical installations and I make games. So for example, I worked a lot with Nike. Sometimes I work on websites. I collaborated a lot with Google Arts and Culture. Sometimes it's speculative design, so thinking about how AI will change brands, products, services, or spaces. This is all NDA work, so you won't see anything there. Unfortunately, it's a bit of a black hole. But what can we do? But sometimes it's just image and video driven. Sometimes I do a lot of art projects. So I love what I do. It's really fun and kind of mad at times. But last year, I started to feel something was missing. I don't know if any of you maybe sometimes felt that the desk was sucking the creativity out of you. Definitely was happening for me. It's not that I was in burnout. It's not that I don't like what I do. I just felt like something changed in my drive. I felt like my passion was somehow shifting. So I decided to take a break. I packed my gear, and I decided to spend a lot of time underwater. So I'm Italian. I grew up in a small village, a small city by the sea. And as you can guess, I used to be in the water a lot. And I find the sea very fascinating because, I mean, you can see it's a mirror-like surface that gives us these beautiful sunsets and sunrises most of the time. But because it's a mirror, it's really hard to look at what is under. And also, we can't really survive underwater. We can't breathe. The pressure doesn't really do well with us. So it feels quite alien. But so the more I spend time underwater, the more I encounter really fascinating, amazing, and kind of bonkers animals and environments. So today, I have decided that I'm going to take you on some dives with me around the world. We're going to leave our desks behind and go in the sea. So yeah, we're going to kind of go on 4 dives and see what's going to happen. For our first dive, we stay not too far. We stay in the Mediterranean Sea. The Mediterranean Sea once, well, still today, but it once was called the cradle of life because it's a really wondrous sea, though today it's been quite exploited. So as we start our dive, we start to find this Posidonia. It's a seagrass that has fruits that float. In fact, this fruit is called the olives of the Mediterranean. I'm going to have a little sip of water in the meanwhile. And this ribbon-like seagrass is really magical because it hosts not only just a lot of life, but also it captures a lot of CO2 from the environment. So a little patch of Posidonia actually captures 15 times more CO2 than the Amazon rainforest. It's really special. As we keep going down the water through our dives, we found this little guy, which is a scorpionfish. He has a cute little beard, amazing pattern on its skin. And these patterns, it helps it hide and kind of camouflage with the rock formation that are around it. And sometimes they have a little nap on a coral. Please don't touch this fish. When we dive, we should never touch anything, but this guy hurts. As we continue, we find a giant cuttlefish. This is truly special. On its skin, it has something called chromatophores, which actually renders the skin of this animal like pixels. They can really camouflage and become anything. So in this case, it was trying to become the branch tree just behind. Cuttlefish are a soft-bodied animal. They have a shell inside. And try to guess what it's doing up there. Any of you, as an idea, what's trying to do? Any takers? So it's very weird, I know. And it's not CGI, it's a real thing. What it's trying to do is wash his body with colored patterns to hypnotize a crab. So crabs have these little pliers, this little pick. And so for a soft-bodied animal, they're quite dangerous. And so over the evolution of the giant cuttlefish, they learned how to create these crazy patterns of color. The crab is just mesmerized, and bloop, it's eaten. As we keep going, a mantis shrimp. You probably heard of this one. It doesn't only have, it doesn't only have beautiful colors and patterns, it also has a punch that is much stronger than a bullet. In fact, when I approached it with my camera, I was a bit scared because my camera is in a big casing, and could have flooded, very epic term. A nudibranch. On land, slugs are kind of meh. But underwater, they're just marvelous. They come in 1,001 colors. They could shed a part of their body to save the core. Some of them can simply eat a bit of algae for the first day of their life, and then they just are fed by this symbiotic relationship that they have. But a characteristic that they all have is that they have chemical sensors that let them find and smell their love, but also food and predators. This one is really crazy. It's an electric clam. As you can see, it does look like it's actually running electricity to our body, and for a long time I thought that was the case. But it's not really electricity. In fact, it's also nicknamed the disco clam, because it just has these special properties where it can reflect light, and it looks like this electricity flashes. And as we keep going, we encounter my favorite one. This is a comb jelly, actinophore, and it was quite hard to find. I had to go at night, a bit deep, because it's over their evolution, they learned how to hide in plain sight. Imagine hiding in the blue sea where there's nothing. Like, how do you do it? Well, you become transparent. And so this little guy at night starts to have flashes of color. This is how I could find it. You can see a bit of red and green in the center image. And this white dot in the middle of the screen, this moment ago was a polyp, but now is a medusa. So jellyfish are a very special animal. They're the only one in the world that has this. So at the beginning of their life, they're a polyp. And so they're this teeny tiny creature that is stuck on a hard surface. They don't swim, they're just stuck there. And then they have this amazing metamorphosis where they become medusa. So they're the actual jellyfish that we know. So for our dive, we're going in a secret location of the Mediterranean Sea, where there is a jellyfish that is called the immortal jelly. It's immortal because it's learned to reverse time. It's mastered its life cycle so well that if it's a bit sick or if it has something that doesn't go well, it can just reverse back to its polyp state and just live forever. Guess why it's a secret location. So jellyfish have really amazing characteristics. The box jellyfish is the most venomous in the world. There is a Eurocandy, there is a teeny tiny jellyfish that you don't feel it when it stings you, but then you don't really have many chances of survival. There is a jellyfish that won a Nobel Prize because of their fluorescence. And they've inspired loads of industries, from genetics to robotics. They come in all sorts of forms and shapes. I mean, they're really beautiful to look at. And they're really elegant, and they really have the most amazing patterns. But these patterns, though, are not just on their body. They're also in the environment that surrounds them. So on that side of the screen, we see a map of hypoxia. Hypoxia means low or no oxygen in the water. Whereas on this side, we see a map of jellyfish bloom that have been encountered in the Mediterranean Sea. If we superimpose them, we can definitely see that there's a pattern going. There's a lot that they have in common. And so I started to wonder, could jellyfish really be nature's very own data visualization? Is nature trying to tell us something here? And so this is how Medusa came about. Medusa is an interactive website that I created in collaboration with Google Arts and Culture that really tells us the story of the Mediterranean Sea through the eyes, through the lens of the jellyfish. So it's really about making the jellyfish the hero of this project. It's not like the bad guy that ruins our summer when he stings us, but it's really about understanding how the environment is changing through what they're doing. So Medusa is a storytelling data-driven project where we learn the effects that rising temperature, overfishing, acidic water, low oxygen, and overfishing have on the environment. So first we learn about jellyfish for a bit of context, and we get a bit of an understanding of the topic and the location we are about to dive in. Then it's all about exploring. So you can choose a very specific location, and then you discover about the climate projects, how the problem, how it affects the environment, and how it affects jellyfish. It is a very simple data storytelling interactive experience. So this project is something that started from a weird obsession. Then it continued with the time spent underwater, but really culminated with the collaboration with Fabien Lombard. He's a scientist at the Sorbonne University, an expert in jellyfish. I was not the only one liking jellyfish, that was good. Together we unraveled the fact that over 670 million years, they're the oldest animal on the planet, they really learned to adapt to even the harshest conditions. So now we're going to go through a few of the chapters of the project. The first one is about temperature increase. The Mediterranean Sea is already 1.5 degrees warmer. And the colored dots that you see on that side represent the bloom of, in this case, Olindias phosphorica, which is the jellyfish that you see up there. So we are in the Tunisian coast in 2017, and the water is 2.5 degrees warmer, which is really a lot. It's really affecting all of the marine life. But this little guy doesn't really care. Jellyfish, this jellyfish, Olindias phosphorica, it just chills and hangs on the Posidonia that we encountered earlier during the day. And then at night, it just drifts with the current to hunt. Water acidification. The Mediterranean, on average, is already 30% more acidic. So how does this work? So the ocean absorbs the CO2. In doing so, the chemical properties of the water change, and therefore they become a little bit more, the water becomes more acidic. And so you can imagine that hard shells and skeleton staying in acidic water struggle to form, but also start to dissolve. But jellyfish, they have superpowers, you're getting it now, don't really have such problems with water acidification. So this jellyfish that looks like a cracked egg has also a symbiotic relationship with a zooxanthelle. It's a bit hard to pronounce, but it's a type of algae that lives in their body, and absorbing the CO2 dampens the effect of the acidification. For our last chapter of this project, we are in the Greek coast in 2016, and we're looking at the low oxygen of the Mediterranean. And the water here has 2% less oxygen. This is something that, with the pandemic, we learned to appreciate, I would say. Small numbers do have a big impact. And so this jellyfish, Aurelia aurita, of course, is not really affected by this. But not only is not affected by no or low oxygen, it's not even affected by the combination of no oxygen, rising temperature, and acidic water. This is a very special jellyfish because it's also been to space. The scientists wanted to study how gravity affects their bodies. And so they packed different jellyfish at different stages on their life in a little tank, sent them on a spaceship. And when they came back, they discovered that actually their morphology has changed. So gravity does have an impact on them. They really do everything. They go to space, they win Nobel Prizes. I'm jealous. So this project really taught me a lot about the beauty and fragility of the sea, and also taught me a lot about jellyfish, of course. I started thinking what I've been saying, the jellyfish are just amazing, they are invincible. But the collaboration with the scientists was very important because it reminded me that even though they can withstand really harsh conditions, if we don't change what we're doing in the oceans, they will ultimately perish. So that was our first dive. For our second dive, we're going to go a bit further. We're going to go to Mexico in the Yucatan. And here we shed all the data, all the finished project, all the logic, all the science. We leave that behind. Things are going to start to get a bit weird here, a bit mystical. So we are in a cenote called Chacmol. Cenotes were formed 66 million years ago when the asteroids that sent the dinosaurs extinct fell in the Yucatan Peninsula. By falling, they created a huge amount of tunnels underground that over time were first caves, then were flooded by salt water, then salt water left, then there was fresh water, and can you imagine in 66 million years a lot happened there. For Mayan, cenotes were a very sacred environment. In fact, they were regarded as a portal to the unknown, to the underworld. And they were sacred, as I mentioned. In fact, they were doing offerings or sacrificing there. So we are in Chacmol, this cenote that you see here, and it's really a beautiful cathedral of light. I mean, how pretty is that? And yes, being a portal to the underworld, light is going to direct us to the darkness. I'm going to see what happens. So we start our dive. Light guides us through. Stalactite and stalagmite starts to appear. We're underwater here. It looks really clean, but we are underwater. It's just that the visibility is really, really good. We're in fresh water. And yeah, I mean, it took millions of years for the stalactite and stalagmites to form. But sometimes as we swim a bit further, we just find some crystals or some fossils. There was a clam this big, really, really old, really very fascinating. As we go through, we find a cloud underwater. And you did hear me right here, a cloud underwater. Crazy. So what happens is that some of the cenotes have, the ceiling of the cenotes collapsed. They're kind of holes on the ground. And so there is all the vegetation that falls under. And falling, it starts to decompose. And I mentioned that sometimes there was salt water, sometimes fresh water. There's a bit of this mix as well still. But they have a different density, so they don't actually mix. Salt water at the bottom, fresh water above. And so just in the middle is where this mist starts. It's called a cloud of hydrogen sulfide. And that's where we're going. We're going to keep swimming. We're going deeper and deeper. But as we get in the cloud, things start to shift a little bit. The senses really start to take over. So what you see here is a collage of 3D scans that I took in and around the water. And yeah, they started to become a bit the playground that was happening in this cloud. You probably have had someone take a photo of you with a flash, and then you just were stuck with this flash forever. Imagine that you're in this cloud, it's thick, you can't really see anything. And so your brain, your retina starts to play tricks on you. Things really starts to change. And so imagine all the animals that you've seen before, all these encounters, your brain is just going to play them back to you. Your retina starts to make them fly in front of your eyes. So here we move from scans to images that I took and then adjusted with artificial intelligence. So imagine, so the learning curve of underwater photography has been really, really steep. So imagine you're flying underwater, trying to stay steady with the current that takes you away. Okay, and then you're trying to very gently press a button so that your image doesn't look too blurry, but the camera is in a huge casing with a huge and clunky button, so there we go. And then you try to shine your handheld light onto an animal that just doesn't want to pose for you. So break that into a lot of tests. A lot of the images were blurry, to be kind to them. And so I was wondering, I've encountered all these amazing creatures, all these amazing things, but they're only in my mind right now. So I started to play with these images and trying to, give them a new life. What could they be? What could they become? And so what we see here, please lend me your imagination. It's a group of nudibranch that I've encountered in one of the dives. So this first one is about to go eat some algae in a little algae patch. This one is called, and I'm not joking, is called the Pikachu nudibranch. And so we have flashes of electric light going through our retina. This last one instead had a lot of, I wouldn't say horns, but kind of soft spikes on their shell. And somehow it was swimming and tried to land on us. Perhaps it was, thought we were a rock. But then we made it outside of the cloud. All the good things come to an end. Now our perspective change. We start to see again. We enter salt water, so literally our weight in the world changes. So we have to deflate our jacket. We have to adjust. This is not our senses really, our perception really needs to adjust. And we keep going through this mystical cavern. The first time I went in a cavern, I didn't have high expectation. I thought it was going to be a lot of rocks, not really much marine life. So I thought, might be boring, I don't know. Let's see. Everybody was really hyped, so let's see. But once I was in there, I was absolutely mesmerized. I mean, you've seen all the lights, the stalactites, the crystal, the stories, the million of years. It's truly magical. And so, in a way, it felt like the exploration with the eye that kind of helped us connect deeper with this liminal space. It felt like there was a connection there. But we make it to the end of our dive. We're going to do our safety stop here. It's really not a bad place to do our 3-minute safety stop. So do you remember the mirror that I mentioned at the beginning of the talk? Remember? Yes? Great. So we're just under now. It's the same. The water is so still, is so calm, that it just reflects back. It's like we're in Inception. It's the same. That was a good dive. All right. Now for our third dive, we're going to go to the Philippines. We're going to go to Coron Bay. To do so, though, we have to go a little bit back in time. So it's the 22nd of September, 1944, and the US Army has launched a fierce attack on the Japanese army in Manila Bay. Manila is at the very north of the Philippines. Around 20 boats sunk. It was quite a tragedy. And so the Japanese army decided to relocate the remaining boats in the safe space of what they thought was safe, of Coron Bay that you see here. So on the 23rd of September, the convoy arrived in Busanga Island. But little did they know what they were about to witness. On the 21st of September, 1944, more than 200 American gunmen took flight. It was a very brief but very intense battle that sunk more than 10 in the Japanese army and really damaged everything else. It was really intense. And so for our dive, we're going to explore Kogyo-maru, which is the boat that you see here. They arrived in Coron Bay on the 23rd of September at 3:40 p.m. And the legend goes that the crewmen, expecting another attack, overnight tried and started to camouflage the boat. But unfortunately, on the 21st of September, they were hit by loads of bombs, and unfortunately, the boat sunk, claiming the lives of 35 crewmen. So now Kogyo-maru is resting on its starboard side at around 40 meters. So our dive begins with a cannon that is now inhabited by this cute little fish that you see in there. Perhaps it's a sign of peace for these lost lives. So one of the first rules of diving is not to touch anything, to be respectful of the environment. Respect here took a whole new meaning. Entering the water, having understood the tragedy that wraps it, it brings a lot of emotions. It brings a very specific set of mind. And so as we enter the boat, we see that most of the hull is cracked. But now it's really full of life. There's marine life that really covers it. As we go deeper, we start to go through the 128 meters of the boat. Visibility starts to change, colors start to change. The way I felt it was, imagine the photography of Blade Runner 2049, but making aquamarine underwater. Same. So the water got murkier, we go deeper in the boat, and now light starts to disappear. We're around 30 meters now, door after door, crack after crack, hatch after hatch, we make our way through. We just encounter empty rooms, now inhabited only by snappers or groupers. We make it to the first supply room. Here, time is stopped. We're still in 1944. All around, there's bags of rice that are completely intact. You can see the rice is still there. And so time stands still. We're 40 meters now. And the mind wanders. This used to be a very busy deck once. Back in 1944, it was a deck where they were really struggling with the fear of a new attack. So should we let the mind wander back into this fear? You know, a little mistake at this depth in a tin box, we're in a box, closed box of 40 meters, and we could regret it. So should we, it's a really fine line between I'm fine and I'm panicking. But should we lean into panic? It's all about steadying ourselves, breath after breath. Breathe in, breathe out. Not too deep, or we run out of air, but just the right amount. Just steadying ourselves, keep it together, and just keep swimming. So one more hatch, and we're in the main hold. It's a huge room. There's a bulldozer in a corner. There's a lot of bags of concrete that now have hardened. And the sea is full of this sort of chain-like fences on the ground. But there's also some bricks that they've requisitioned from the Americans. There's some American text on it. So I personally find diving sometimes a bit better than going to a psychologist. Brick after brick, problem by problem, things have a different perspective. We put the problems back to where they belong. They don't matter as much. In diving, you can understand when you're stressed by looking at the way you breathe. If you breathe I mentioned it earlier, if you breathe too much, too fast, you're going to consume a lot more air. So it's just about checking yourself and slow down, calm down, and everything keeps going. So we made it to our last hatch. Maybe we should dim the light a little bit if it's possible. We made it to our last hatch. We check our buoyancy, so that we don't touch anything, and we sleep inside. But perhaps it's the pressure, perhaps it's the atmosphere, perhaps it's all of the nitrogen that we've been breathing, that when we go through, there's a world completely full of life. So something that I was definitely not expecting. The videos that you see here are real, at least in the first moments of their existence. It's animals that have shared the dive with us. They were accompanying us through the boats, and they've been sharing our space. This little guy is a horned boxfish, and perhaps this is just a digital layer on its life. Perhaps this is finally a moment where this white margin stargazer could finally be starstruck with joy when he saw the stars. Or this hairy frogfish just decided to get rid of all his hair, becomes a tornado of algae and sand, and start something new. Or this little mini cuttlefish that decided to forget camouflaging. I'm just going to become something else and try to scare the hell out of this diver that's just annoying me. And so as we make our way to the surface, this surrealist, Dali-like world comes to an end. So for our last dive, we're going to go in the coral triangle that you see just there. So this is a lush area. More than 76 species of coral of the entire world are there. There's tons of marine life. But in saying so, I realized that actually only 5% of the blue part of the blue planet is what we know. 95% of the ocean remains unexplored. We don't really know much about it. Ocean exploration is really difficult because of the pressure. And in fact, there's more than 2,000 species discovered every year. It's quite a big number. There's not much that we know. So based on the photos that I've collected during my dives, I decided to start to work together with a machine learning model to try and see if there's a way that we could discover this marine species that we don't know much of. Could technology perhaps help us discovering something new, something that we can't yet see? And so in these dives, we're going to make new friends. But are they real? Did evolution get in the way of our encounter? Or are they really out there? Imaginary tales of what could be? Or just a play of colors? What is and what could be? So as we make our way to the surface for our last time, I hope that this has given you a fresh perspective. It definitely did it for me. It kind of gave me a new perspective, both for the mysteries underwater, but also within myself. It really has transformed the way that I see the world. This journey has really pushed me beyond my comfort zone, and it really made me appreciate the moment of exploration, the journey. I think as a designer, sometimes I get stuck into making a pixel-perfect finished product. And so for me, it was really key to kind of explore and enjoy the journey without having to worry what to make with it. And so this experience has regained my passion, my purpose, my interest for creativity. And also it made me realize I felt empowered that my work at the desk doesn't necessarily mean that it's taking me away from nature. Perhaps it's just a tool that it helps me experience deeper what nature has to offer. And so here I thank you for coming with me in these 4 dives around the world. And I really hope that it's given you a fresh perspective. And I really hope that's going to make you want to go on an adventure. And I really hope that this adventure is underwater. Thank you.